Salam, hello and welcome YouTubers. This car is an HSP Blue Rocket and I had this car for a few years now and it's an awesome drift car. Check it out. And because the car had no lights, I had to install some lights on it. It was just impossible to drive the car at night. I couldn't see where it was going. So at the front, I installed these LED bulbs. I installed these two light pods here, and it made this car look like a legitimate rally car. At the back, I installed red lights under the spoiler, which is enough to let me see that this is the tail of the car. And after I installed the lights, I was able to drive the car at night like that. Now, however, currently the lights are running on a separate battery that's lithium polymer 7.4 volts. I had to mount the battery underneath the cover because at the time this seemed the only idea. Now, what I want to do with the lights, I want to install a radio controlled switch. And after doing that, I will be able to do like so. I will be able to turn on and off the light with a click from my remote control device. But I can only do this if I have 3-channel remote or more. 3, 4, 5 channels. 3 channels is good enough. To achieve my goal, I will be installing this light switch from Turnigy. Now, here's the switch. Let me get this out. And by the way, don't be fooled by this badge. The motor is 29.5 and it's a fully ported Pro Mod motor. It's very powerful and torquey motor. So here's the switch and comes along with it a diagram. Here comes this diagram. Now, according to the diagram, the two large red wires here are going to intercept the power connection of the lights. That means the power going from the battery should be connected to one of these and the power going to the light should be connected to one of those. And then this cable here goes to the 3rd channel slot inside the receiver, which is currently inside the receiver box that I will have to take out in a minute. The battery is slightly low on charge, so I'll hook the charger and let it charge. In case if you are wondering, these connectors are called Tamiya connectors. I know Tamiya is an RC brand itself, and I'm not sure why these connectors are called Tamiya, perhaps because they first came to existence with Tamiya models. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect one end of this cable with the lights and the other end of this cable with the battery. And according to the diagram, the ground cable or the black cable from the lights also should be connected to the battery, which makes sense to complete the circuit. Now, I will also be using this connector to perform this job. There's no reason to use this other than I already installed the female part of it on the body. So it will make sense to use the male with the female part instead of changing the entire connector. Now the lights I'm running on the body, or I installed in the body, are 6 volts and the receiver battery is also 6 volts. It will make perfect sense to make the receiver battery also supply the power to the lights. Now this will reduce the run time of the battery a little bit, but the battery has enough capacity to make me playing all day long, probably emptying 2 fuel tanks, which is right here. And now I'll take the screws out and get the receiver out. When I'm working on a project like this and I'm taking screws out from the application, I like to keep a nearby tray, just like this one, so I can keep all my screws in. And if you have an HSP application, by now you should be knowing that the receiver box screws are 2.5 millimeters. And if you don't run such application, now you know. 2, 3, And this is the last screw. And this is the inside of the receiver box. Here's the receiver itself. Okay, if I do this now, I have one of two options, because on the third channel slot I have installed this battery meter, which when I turn on the receiver, it tells me how much power do I have, and now it says full power because I'm charging. So if I unplug the charger, yeah, it still says full power. That's because the car is not running and it just took a fresh charge. As I turn the steering left and right, now you can see that the lights are changing. What I will do, I will try to have a Y connector. I don't want to sacrifice the voltmeter. I'll try to have a Y connector with two ends. So one end will go with the light switch that I'm installing right here. One end will go here, and then the other end will go to the voltmeter. Let me grab that. So this is the Y connector, and it has one male end right here and two female ends. Let me show you this in a better way. And it has these two female ends right here. One can be connected with the light switch, and the other one can be connected with the voltmeter. Right, so here's the receiver, and it has 3 channels, and it's numbered. So here we can see it says channel 1, channel 2, and channel 3. Now channel 1 is for the steering, channel 2 is for the throttle, and channel 3 is for any application you wish to install in your car. For example, the Traxxas Summit has channel 3 for the differential lock. So let's take out channel 3, which is for the light, which is for the voltmeter, and then instead I'll have the Y connector installed there. And when you do this, make sure that the color coding is correct. The cable should be installed like this with a straight orientation of the receiver. So this is the straight orientation, and the cable should be plugged like this. The black cable right here goes to the right, and the white goes to the left, and like so. Now, since the voltmeter connector is out, I will plug it anyway in here and see if I'm going to have a connection. Yeah, I do. And all the channels are working. Okay, so far so good. Now we'll come to the part where we install the power for the light switch. I'm connecting the light switch here. Now this is a bit confusing because there is no black color. This is actually brown. I'm not sure if the camera is showing that, but this is brown, and there is no white color. Instead of the white, there is orange. But I know from previous experience that the brown is actually black and the orange is white. Now we come to the part where we connect the power. And currently I'm thinking that perhaps the best way to connect the power is by using this cable, which is already extended outside. Beside using this, I will also have to solder some wires, and I'll show you this in a minute. Now, to take the inner connectors out, there are 2 small pins on the side that I'll have to push inwards in order to be able to pull this big pin, metal pin, outside. I'm starting with the power cable, the red one. And I'm using a small screwdriver to do this task. And here it is. The small cable is for the power switch, and it is soldered to this connector right here. To ease my way, I'll use a sharp nose plier. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'll grab the wire stripper and I'll have this wire connected right here. It does not matter which cable is connected to the power cable of the battery, because one of them is going to be connected with the power cable of the battery and the other one will be connected with the power cable of the lights. So both of them are power. There's no ground here. So make sure you don't connect any of these to a ground connection. Okay, so now that the cable is seated along with the power cable and the switch cable, or the receiver switch cable, I can solder it. But I'll do the soldering part all together because there will be probably 4 cables that will need to be soldered, or 3 of them. Either 3 or 4, I'll see down the road. Now let me strip the other end. And at the same time, here's the connector. I'll strip the power end of it. And I'll also strip the negative side or the ground side because I will also be doing some work here. That's how the cables are connected now. And ideally, once I connect the ground, I should be able to control the lights from the remote control. So let me get into that. And I'll do a test before I solder or commit. Now I'm grabbing the other end from the Tamiya connector. See, that's why I like to use the tray, so I can keep all the parts here. And be careful, never let these ends come in contact. Sharp nose pliers, make them straight. Now these 2 metal parts, they just hug the cable from here and make it sit nice, and then the rest of the cable is connected here and soldered here. I'm doing exactly the same thing. There isn't enough room, but I will make room for it. Yeah, awesome. Okay, this is tight enough. Now, once I connect both ends and turn on the remote control, I should be able to get lights. So here they are connected, and the remote control is on. Receiver is on. We have steering. I have throttle and 3rd channel. Yay! Did you see that? So I didn't have to sacrifice the voltmeter or compromise any other components in the car, and I have lights just with a click of the button. How awesome is that? And you can do exactly the same thing. It's not complicated. And the beautiful thing about this switch, it can work with any RC application as long as you have 3 channels. Right, now let me wrap up the work and do some soldering. Make sure that the wires are properly connected forever and ever. Now, I need to solder these 2 cables and weld them together. But as you can see, the one on the left is almost double the thickness for the one on the right. Now I have these 2 heat shrink tubes. This one fits in here nicely, but it doesn't fit in the other one, the bigger one. So I got the bigger heat shrink tube to cover the bigger one. I'll be using both. Strange maybe, but necessary, yes. So this one goes here, and then the big one goes for the big cable. Now, because I'm going to solder both, I like to keep them connected this way. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll connect them like so. And I'll make sure that the heat shrink tubes are away from the heat area. I'll give it a little bit of solder iron on the tip of the solder. Just enough to make contact with the wires and heat them. And then I'll remove any excess solder iron. And like that, the wires now are soldered and nice. And check this out. Strong enough. When it's too squeezy and too tight, I'm just going to treat this abnormality with the pliers, and to make an easy access for the heat shrink tube to slide in. I'm going to use a heat gun to shrink the shrink tubes. Now you could use a lighter, but you should be extremely careful if you are using lighter. The direct flame will definitely burn the heat shrink tube, and it will not be a nice finish, believe me. Now in this case, my heat gun, which is this one, is a broken hair dryer that have missed its bits and pieces, but the core of it's still working. Now, after heating the heat shrink tube, it did shrink, but not by much. It was actually a bit large, I have to admit. It was large, and I expected that this might happen. You can see it's still sliding. It can slide everywhere. I expected that this will happen, but this was the second smallest size I had, so I had to give it a push. Now the smaller size, or the smallest size I had, which is this one, wouldn't fit here because this is a thicker cable. Now I'm having only this bit that is exposed, but never leave an exposed power cable. It's just wrong, so I'm going to go old school and use an electrical tape to cover this. Not the best idea. I mean, using electrical tape with such small wires just doesn't feel right. But I don't have any other option. I didn't have the correct size heat shrink tube from the beginning. I tried, but it didn't work. Having a little bit of solder iron on the tip. This actually always helps soldering. Alright, so the negative terminal is completed. Now let's do the positive. Now that I'm done soldering, I'll keep the solder in some place secured until it cools down, and now I'll treat the connectors again. What I was talking about earlier, that these connectors, they have small metal pieces on the sides here that I earlier did push them in so I could pull them out. Now I'll have to do the opposite and just take them out like that. You can see them now. There's one on the other side as well. And I'll do the same with the positive terminal. And it should be out like this. So now we can slide the cables back in the connector safely. Now, if you come to a situation like this, where here's the connector and here are the cables, but I'm not sure where the black should go or where the red should go. So the best idea to overcome this issue is get your charger, because a charger tells you which is red and which is black. And if I place the connector like so, then I know that the red should come here and the black should be underneath it. And that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now I'm going to organize the wires inside the receiver box. I'll keep this wire hanging out along with the battery charge wire. I'm going to install the 4 hex 2.5 mm screws for the receiver box. And I will not tie them too much, just snug. And always when installing such screws, I like to go with cross pattern. With such cross pattern, I ensure proper distribution for the force on the lid. And here's the last one. Because this is a drift car and it moves from side to side so quick, so fast, the car actually does experience enormous amount of G-force. And to keep these wires secured, because I don't want them to be playing like that, I'll use a couple of these zip ties to secure the cable that I extended on the main battery cable. I will tie one knot here with a zip tie and another one here to prevent any play with the cable. And not so tight, just to make sure it's tight enough. It's holding cables in place, not insanely tight. There's no need for that whatsoever. And that's it. So now the Subaru has remotely controlled lights, and that's really awesome. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are not subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Thank you a lot for watching. Take care, be safe, and do it yourself.